A year after Congress approved of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, that is the stimulus package during COVID, Republicans have decided to take the money that's left over, because it turns out there's a lot of money left over, and they're using it to fund tax cuts. Because of course. So now, this according to an article by the Washington Post, Republicans in nearly 24 states have increased their efforts to try to take some of that money that was set aside for the pandemic, which, by the way, still people are still getting sick with COVID. People are still dying from COVID. COVID is here. It's here for good. It's going to stay. They've decided to take money that they could have used to, fight that, help people get vaccines, help people get tested, or even shore up their local economies. If there's enough people that get off sick, there's big outbreaks, or even prepare for a potential recession. They've decided to take that money to go and give tax breaks to the rich and corporations, because of course. Oh, and also, by the way, to try to do gas tax holidays, like in the case of Florida and Ron DeSantis, to try to not only starve, their general fund of money, but also to try to help Republicans win in midterm elections, of course. So now, look, how do they actually do this? So, look, when the American Rescue Plan passed, Congress basically gave a blank check to every city and state to bolster their budget, right? They set very, very few rules, conditions for how local leaders could use that money. That was a big complaint from progressives saying, hey, you're just going to allow these corporations or states to use the money to plug their own budget holes. So they said, well, we'll make one rule. You're not allowed to subsidize tax cuts. Almost immediately, Republicans in many states sued the Biden administration to allow themselves to use that money to give tax cuts. Because of course they did. And by the way, the Republican takeover of the judiciary on the local level has actually helped them in a lot of these cases where judges pushed through by the Trump administration have been making rulings. And again, these are local judges that would allow these states to use this money in order to give tax cuts or to, fund their, plug some holes in their budget so that they can then use the money that they had saved for tax cuts. So now, right after this passed, GOP leaders challenged the tax cut in court. Attorneys and generals in 21 states fought to overturn the Biden administration's policy, according to federal court filings, backed at times by groups like the Chamber of Commerce, whose corporate members lobbied conservative leaning states to reduce tax bills. In nearly every case, they have prevailed, hamstringing the Treasury Department while opening the door for states to pursue their own tax cuts. In Florida, for example, as I mentioned, the DeSantis and his allies were able to leverage about $200 million in federal coronavirus aid to pay for the gas tax, the suspension of the gas tax. In Texas, state leaders shifted federal coronavirus dollars around in the budget to free up funds for crackdowns on immigration. And other states had used it to shore up unemployment insurance programs. Normally, if the unemployment insurance in a state runs out of money, which they did during the pandemic, a lot of them did, they might actually have to raise taxes on corporations. They decided, no. With the advice of the Chamber of Commerce, who said, oh, don't worry about that. Don't raise taxes on us. Just use that free government money. Use that for your unemployment shortfall and don't raise taxes on me. And that's exactly what happened. Again, it saves some money saves their members money because, hey, it's the federal government's money. It's not our money. Oh, no. No, 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 no. So now, ironically, the Republicans in the states had successfully argued in court that they needed the money and they needed to have no stipulations on where they spend that money because they argued the federal government is putting us in a very, very difficult position right now because if we refuse to follow their stipulations, well, then we lose out on a lot of aid money. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. That way you use the money responsibly as it's supposed to be used and not to give your donors tax cuts. But they argued that. And while they argued that in the states, the same Republican, or I should say, the state's Republican representatives in Washington voted unanimously against the package, saying, oh, it's going to create waste. The same waste that Republicans in the states are saying we needed the money to do. We needed to waste it on tax cuts for corporations. And look, the numbers on this are just disastrous. At least 16 states committed about $14 billion toward replenishing their unemployment funds. That move spared businesses having to deal with tax hikes. And also took money away from what these governments might have put towards other health or economic initiatives. So, also taking away money from housing, taking away money from public transportation, taking away money from, trying to help make sure that these workplaces are safe, taking away money from all of that and just giving it in tax cuts for the rich. And the Biden administration can't do a damn thing about it. Because again, you have all these justices, all these judges that are ruling against it and saying, hey, look, federal government can't actually stipulate how a state spends this federal money that has been basically block granted to you with, no strings attached almost. So, hey, look, that's what happens when you have and live under corporate rule. Corporations get everything while the taxpayer continues to get screwed.